Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in the community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things Florida real estate on how you can take your business to the next level. Well, the Al Nicoletti Show is live. This is the second episode I've done that is in live format, and it's on every Wednesday at 8 p.m. I do this mantra. I think I'm going to do it every time now, just so everybody knows when the show is going to be. It is every Wednesday at 8 p.m. with select Mondays at 8 p.m. There's one next Monday. I'll do a little promo for that thing as well. But for today, I have a very special guest that is on the show with me. His name is John Alexander, a.k.a. the Land Mogul. John has been flipping real estate and doing real estate for 40 years. And he has such an impressive resume of stuff. I even have it in front of me right now that I'm going to read it to you. I want to make sure everybody knows where his books are, what he's been doing, how long he's been doing it, and where it all started. And we're going to make sure we do this amazing introduction for him, and we'll talk about the topics. But this guest today, John, he's been teaching individuals nationwide, telling everybody how to buy and sell real estate. He's been doing it since 1982. He's been training and doing mentoring since 1993. He was the host of the Real Estate Riches TV show nationwide from 2005 to 2010. And he's the author of many, many books that he's done on either note financing, real estate investing, and some of these books, and make sure you take note of these. We'll talk about some of these books with John later, but you can check them out on Amazon. We'll make sure we put the graphics up. But some of his books include How to Flip Vacant Lots. That's the popular book for sure. He loves talk. He's going to show it in front of the camera. And How to Flip High-End Land, How to Flip Discounted Notes, note investing in land. We'll talk about that. And Living Trust for Real Estate Investors. He's all about the real estate and the land. Land. We're going to talk about all about land, Florida land. And on the show, John's going to talk about why is the land market booming today, especially in Florida. I mean, so many developers and hedge funds are buying land or buying property. So why is the land market booming today? And where are the opportunities in the land investing in this land boom, this hot market? And how can people cash in on this land boom? I think land is really fascinating. If you buy the land, you don't have tenants, or even if you wanted to put a structure on there, you don't have a lot of maintenance with land, and land is not that as expensive as a house. So we're going to learn all about this whole thing with land. So without further ado, I want to welcome John Alexander, the Land Mogul. John, welcome to my show.
Hey, thank you, Al. I'm so happy to be here. You know, we've communicated several different times, and we've kind of been in groups and stuff, and you've just been so impressive. And I'm really glad to see the show. I'm glad to see where it goes because, you know, it's such a value to the real estate community.
I appreciate that, John. I'm excited to see where it's going to go. The focus of it being in Florida real estate, you know, bringing on these rock stars, superstars that understand this whole industry. And just before we dive into your whole background, it's incredible how you and I even connected, right? So it wasn't that you were in Jacksonville, you know, we're at a networking event, or, hey, there's the Land Mogul. He's online with his Facebook group. Make sure you check him out on the Facebook group. But how we connected was through Clubhouse, the big phenomenon of this Zoom audio app where everybody jumps on. You can be on the other side of the planet, and everybody's on this one app. They're talking one at a time, hopefully not over each other. But you were on this app. You created a room, and I remember jumping in on it, and you were just like, "Hey, we got this guy, Al Nicoletti. You know, who are you? What are you?" And we talked about probate, but you were incredible about how you brought people together in your group. So it's fascinating that we didn't even meet in person. We still haven't met in person. Meeting you online, but Clubhouse was how we connected, and it's incredible. So I'm so happy to have you here, John.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to dive into it. I think Clubhouse was a great opportunity for a lot of people. And when you came in the room, I said, who is this guy? Where did he come from? And why haven't I heard of him before? So you were so impressive with the information and the nuggets you were giving people. So I always appreciate people who have, a lot of skill in the business, because that's really what it takes today to really excel and do your best, for everybody.
You really have to have that niche. You have to have the expertise and really scale it and figure out what you're doing with it. But John, before
Yes.
we got to get into you. Let's talk about John Alexander. What was John doing before real estate? How did you even get into it? What was that motivation of like, go back 40 years? What was
Oh
that
man.
mindset of the John Alexander back then?
Wow. Well, I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I was raised in a family where that my father was a farmer and we farmed, and it was like month to month, year to year. So, I came up with that idea of, well, I mean, if you really got good at your business, you could excel. And then I got a hold of some great books while I was in high school about business. And I just loved them. And I knew that was the direction I was going to go. So when I was on that tractor, plowing up the field with the dust, and I'm coughing all day in the dust, I'm dreaming about becoming an entrepreneur. And so I went on into try to go to college. That's, went for a couple of years and decided, no, that's not for me. I wanted to dive right into selling. That was the first step. And I started selling stuff, just whatever I could, get a hold of and get hired to do. And from there, I found myself getting really good at that aspect of it, and it translated quite well to retail. So I ended up working for a furniture company and tripled their sales, like month 1, month 2, 3, 4. Then they put me in their top store there in Dallas, and I continued to, keep those sales up. And finally they came to me. This was like my first no money down situation. I thought, oh man, that was never going to happen to me. Who am I to get somehow no money down deal? But this was a furniture store, so it was losing money. They were going to close it, but they figured, man, this guy can triple sales in that, like he did. Then it could be a great deal, and they could continue selling their furniture. They were a manufacturer, and that's what I did. I took over a store and boomed that and grew that, and then I sold out because a competing mall was coming in, and that's really when I got into real estate. I spent all my money, blew it, like I think most people would, and I had $2,000 left. And my dad, who was in the real estate business, he actually told me, you know what, you blow that $2,000 or you can put into a real estate deal with me, and I'll teach you the business. And so the first mentor I had, I was lucky, it was my dad, but he made it very, very difficult for me. He literally handed me a number and told me, call this guy and tell him we're going to give you this much down, and this much is what we want to pay for it. And I was so scared. I thought, oh man, I was only like 22 at the time. I didn't think I was going to pull that off, but I did. It was really easy. And boom, before I knew it, I had my first deal. We developed a piece of property, sold off about 23 lots. And in that first month, I made over $130,000, mainly in note payments. So that's going to be stretched out over 10 years. So I just did that over and over for a while. And then from there, I went into building on these lots that we were doing. And then from there, flipping, because the markets change. I went to like 3 crashes. So every time we had a crash, boom, back into it. Finally got into teaching. And that's why just people coming to me saying, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And I just started teaching friends at first, which is kind of what my dad did. And before long, I got really good at being able to come up with systems and ideas that were just not the norm on how to flip property. So by 1999, I'd come up with a concept that is called Equitable Conversion, I found it. It was kind of like a hidden little gem waiting to be found. And that's really what allows the investors today to be able to tie up property and then sell without acting as a real estate agent. Because up until 1999, they're always kind of saying, no, you can't do that. You're acting as a real estate agent. But after I discovered this little known law, we started using it. And through the commercial that I ended up doing, it went all over the United States. So pretty much that was a done deal. And the wholesale was on fire after that. And so I just continued, went into the note business, went to every little side, because with every market change, there'll be a different type of opportunity that comes into the market. And if you're ready for it, if you're creative, if you run with it, you've got all the basics down, you can find it and just take off with it. So that's what I've been doing since.
I got to say, so something that seemed to be a common theme on the prior episodes that I've had is before real estate, you were doing something, and then now you jump into real estate, and it seems that that sales side of you that comes into real estate seems to be what you are today or what you were then, and you keep selling, and then you're doing real estate stuff when you started out with your dad. And so you had that natural background getting into it. But as you say, I mean, anybody really can get into the whole real estate game, in the land investing game. So and we'll talk about that note stuff, because that's something I don't really know anything about with notes and investing in land. But John, tell us, why is the land business booming today? Why is this market that's so hot booming now more than ever before? And you've seen it since the 80s, the 90s, the thousands, 3 crashes, right? So 87, 08, and I mean, are we counting 2020 as the third one? What's the okay?
I actually started in the middle of a crash, right? So I started in 82 when interest rates were like 18% for a house, and nothing was moving. I mean, it just shut it down. But you know what was moving? Land like crazy. So we were able to sell like 30 lots in 30 days. That's like a lot per day. And I realized, wow, okay, every time a crash comes, make sure I'm in the land business. But I just got sucked into all these other things, because there's a lot of money in all types of real estate, building, flipping, rehab, all of that, landlording, all of that. Now, I just, as the older I got, the less I wanted to work, the less I wanted to go out and go through a smelly house and stuff. So about 7 years ago, and it coincided with my father passing. And just like 2 weeks before he passed, I was on the phone with him talking about a deal he was flipping. Now, he's 89. He's in a wheelchair. The man grew up in Depression era. He had his third grade education. Couldn't read or write, but he can sign his name. So I'm thinking, wow, he made it all the way to 89 and still flipping these deals and driving himself to dialysis every week. All right. So I'm saying, okay, so long term, and I'm getting older. So I'm thinking, what is something I can do like for the rest of my life? Because I didn't want to go into the fix and continue to fix and flip and stuff like that. So I decided, land has got to be it. So I started just flipping land, and I have not flipped a house in the last 7 years. So it's totally been infill lots or acreage. And so there's so much opportunity right now going forward in this. And that's because right now we're seeing a boom. And this boom really started a couple of years ago when COVID hit, actually. So when COVID hit, what happened was more people are staying in their houses. They're not moving out. They're not, some of them stopped making payments. Some of them stopped making the rent, but they're not moving. And so houses are not moving. Therefore, the inventory is shrinking. And as this inventory shrinks, you have less and less houses on the market. Therefore, it's pushing prices up. And as these prices go up, and at some point it has to stop. We don't know when or where, but we have a new phenomena that I had never seen it before until after the 2008 crash. And starting right in, I guess, at the early parts of 2009 or the mid parts, I started seeing all of these Wall Street financiers and people from these big Wall Street companies forming their own companies to buy houses to rent. So this began this new segment that we've never had in the market before. And I'm going to tell you, this is a very key point that is really helping the market continue to grow right now, because right now builders are building to rent. Now, back when I was building, even back 10 years ago, it was almost impossible to get builders to go out and build homes for the sole purpose of selling them to investors to rent out. They didn't want that. They wanted to sell to end buyers. They had policies that would not allow you to do it. So now it's completely reversed. So as Wall Street money is moving in, it's bringing this opportunity for builders now to build for them primarily, because we've got a whole new landlord nation that we're facing, and they're the new landlords, quite frankly. Now, good or bad, I'm just saying there's opportunity in every market. So you want to see, well, what's happening in the market? Where's the opportunity? How do I take advantage of that? because right now builders are not being able to find enough land. And because of that, land prices have gone up, supply and demand. And they're literally right now backed up. Every builder I talk to is backed up. They've got custom homes that they are having, scheduled much later than what they could before. They've got contracts with other companies to build a number of homes, and that's backed up because they're scrambling to find lots or develop some parcels into lots in order to make that happen.
It's really fascinating that we're talking about these big conglomerates trying to build and get land, or they're trying to find it. So really there's that big opportunity because they're trying to find it. And so you have a lot of either the wholesalers or the investors out there that know where those lots are, right? They do their basic tax delinquency list or pre-foreclosures. They can do their code enforcement. They can find those opportunities with the land. And there's that big opportunity that they can go direct to seller, lock up the deal, and now the hedge fund or the big conglomerate is interested in buying that, and you can get a sweet little deal. I know there's some great investors out there that are doing that, especially in Jacksonville. But do you find that opportunity seems to be more so with the larger cities, or now it's kind of anywhere, like the small counties? And
look, it's spreading like fire. So like today, I just picked up another deal, and this deal's nowhere near the Houston area where I live at. And it's out, I don't even know where it's at. It's somewhere between College Station and Austin, in the middle of no man's land. And I got off the phone with a realtor, and I picked this lot up for $500. I got off the phone with a realtor today, and she said, John, right now we could easily get $8,000 for that little lot. It's just a little tiny lot, not even a quarter acre. And she's saying right now in this area, they're flying off the shelves. She said something like they're popping like popcorn, I think is what her expression was. So it's spreading even away from the metropolitan areas out into wherever the demographic is showing that the growth is. So what you really want to do is maybe jump on Google, find out which counties are having the biggest explosion of population. It's easy to do. Google search demographic population for whatever the counties are, and you can see just how fast they're growing. That means more people moving in there. That means more demand, and obviously land's going to be going up in that area along with builders coming in.
Yeah, and more builders are going to be going in. I mean, in areas that you would have never thought were going to be prosperous like they were before, right? So,
right.
In Florida, you have the Jacksonville area, and then you have the surrounding counties. Clay County, which, 20, 30 years ago was just that farmland, nothing happening out there. And now it's just that booming area. Everybody's trying to build and get houses there. And now nobody's paying attention to the even smaller counties, where I find that there's great probate opportunities. It's a whole other thing with land and probate opportunities. Yeah. But
actually, this deal here that I picked up that I was talking about with you just today, that is a probate deal. These were like little sleepy areas, right? And these were purchased many years ago. And I talked to the executrix of that property and was able to put the deal together with her. So there's opportunity out there in these little areas because, and probably even more so even in Florida, because you have so many people that bought these parcels many years ago. Look, there was a big land boom between the 1950s and the 1970s in Florida. That's when literally 1/3 of your agricultural land was developed into subdivisions and plotted out, and the lots were laid. Some of them are in swampland, no doubt. But there's a tremendous number of them that were not, and they're still not. And even some of those that were, they're developing around. They're creating little things where, okay, we're going to do an RV park or whatever. So there's all this opportunity that came, but this is like generations ago. So sometimes we're going through 1 or 2 generations later, and yeah, you're going to hit probate for sure. There's just no way out of it, and you need to be able to deal with it.
And of course, we can't get off the Al Nicoletti Show without talking about probate, right?
Well, so, I tell you, you can't go too far in a deal without talking to an attorney in order to make sure your deal flies through. I literally had a deal where Um, the father passed away, left it to the daughter, and she thought, okay, I'm going to spend the next 6 months to a year to go through probate. And she had answered one of my letters. I didn't even know it was a probate. I wasn't mailing directly for probate. It just happened to be that way, right? And and I told her right away. I said, "Look, you don't have to wait. We don't know what the market's going to be like whenever you do come out of it. But you'll be surprised how fast probate can take place. I mean, it could be 30, 60, 90 days." Or whatever. And so there's no use in waiting. You might as well just go ahead and let's get the contract. You've got a buyer ready, right? You're ready to sell. We came to an agreement on price. And literally like in 30 days, we had a deal sold and she got her money. She was happy. We got our deal. We were happy.
I'm sure. I mean, those could be great deals, right? We were talking about that backstage about like how probate, especially with the land, can be a great deal. You got to really run the numbers though, because some of this land could be about 3,000, 4,000. It's not like high numbers with homes that are 250, 300. It's a little bit different of a ball game, but nonetheless, highly populated areas like Jacksonville, with there being so many properties, there's not land that you're going to find maybe with a probate, but you go to the smaller counties or the lesser known counties, and that's where you have a lot more land, but you can have a probate opportunity that may be worth it in your game. So, I mean, you like the probate world. I mean, we've talked about that on Clubhouse almost every Saturday.
Well, that's because I'm in the land business. Now, if you're in the house business, I think it's less. But in the land business, we're most of the time dealing with, I'm either talking to somebody that's 60 or over, or I'm talking to the children of somebody. My oldest deal that I came across, Al, you get a kick out of this because you're in the business, but this guy had this property in his piece of land in his family since 1924, I believe. He was the fifth holder of this property. And all he's been doing his whole life, and his father is paying taxes every year on this. So he was like, I don't want to put my children through this, so I just want to get rid of it. I literally bought that from him for the taxes that year, $75. I then sold it it was landlocked. So, there's some trouble with some of these lots, but they're all opportunity. But yeah, I ended up getting around 4,000 for that for a quick flip. So, and then subsequently, she just called me the other day and said, I just sold it to this other company in Houston, and she made a nice profit on it as well.
You never know what you're going to come across with some of these deals. You never know the margins, the value behind them. So probate or not probate, although, I have a preference towards probate. How can people, investors, whether they're in the Jacksonville, the Florida areas, how can they cash in on this boom? What is that John Alexander, the Land Mogul tip about cashing in on the boom?
I think right now your big opportunity is contacting the out-of-state owners, because where these properties were sold so many years ago, now that they stay dormant, nobody wants them for years until a boom hits. Every time we have a boom, everything starts to explode and everybody wants to buy everything. And Florida's history. It tends to go off the chart, right? We overbuild, we do all kinds of stuff. Look, if I'm not mistaken, the first overbuild was apartment complexes. They were building for condos. Somebody invented the concept of the condos, right? I think back in the 70s somewhere, because they had overbuilt apartments. So then they said, okay, we'll just sell them. And so they sold these condos out. And very successfully so. Then from there, they overbuilt those at another boom. And then they said, well, how do we get rid of them? They invented the timeshare. So the first timeshare in America was there in Florida, by the way.
Timeshare.
So we have a history in Florida for overbuilding, and then we scrambled to do stuff. Well, right now, the opportunity is they created this land. They subdivided it. All the hard work and the expensive part has already been done. So we as an investor can come in there and literally put a contract. And the way I teach it, I put a contract on a piece of property. Then I go look for my buyer. All right. So it may be a builder or it may be retail. And those are two giant opportunities. I should probably dive into that a little bit to show you the difference. But Once I have that lined up, then I put everything into closing, and we do kind of like a double closing. I have about 3 or 4 different techniques that show you how to do the flip depending on your buyer. I'm always doing the same thing with sellers, contract it, and then we just go into a different technique for ultimately getting it to the end buyer. But that's where I think the biggest opportunity is. Out-of-state owners, and again, you're dealing with generally you're going to be dealing with an heir, quite frankly, at that point. And hopefully most of the time you don't have to deal with probate, although I guarantee you will, because I do all the time. But again, just make sure that's all included in your profit, and you've got nothing to lose on it then.
So we can dive a little bit deeper on that for everybody that's watching, because you've been in the game 40 years. So what are some of those techniques depending on the buyer? What are those interesting tips and techniques you can help share with people that are watching and getting involved with those buyers?
Well, the first one, which I teach at a very basic level, in fact, that's what this book is about. The how to flip vacant lots. This book is designed to go through and show you how to take a lot, and really a low-end lot, and flip it so that most of the time you're not even going to go through a title company, believe it or not. And the buyers will almost insist that we don't, because the numbers just don't make sense. It's like what you're just saying. Some things make sense to bring a probate situation into it, some don't. So if it's on the really low side, it wouldn't. On these lots, it would, because the sweet spot for this type of flip is going to be where we're buying a lot for somewhere between, and it could be anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, and we're flipping from generally $15,000 to $30,000. And that's a real sweet area that fits so many retail buyers, including builders. So this is done primarily without investing your money in the actual property. So we're not buying it from the seller again. We're tying it up on a contract, and then we're going to flip it to that end buyer. And so one of the favorite ways that I have on flipping these smaller lots is I'm using contracts, really. And so there's 2 contracts generally. Okay. And let's segment it out so we're not confusing anybody. I guess the easiest type of flip is going to be to a builder, because that really is going to really parallel how home flippers that do wholesale flips flip to an investor. So the investor is savvy. They know, hey, you're going to be in between me and that seller, so I'm going to make sure your profit's taken care of. They don't have a problem with that. They're fine with you making profit, because you're bringing them a deal that they're going to make even a lot more money on. So that can be structured pretty much the same way that a wholesale house is being flipped. So if you're wholesaling already, you can wholesale land pretty easily right now with what you know about houses. You can wholesale those to builders once you get all the basics of where to go find the properties, what you're looking for, what you want to avoid, that kind of thing, right? Just like you would learn for houses. But the technique of the flip is the same. But it's going to be different if you're retailing. And this is the caveat I'm going to have to throw in here, because right now I'm getting more money from a retail buyer than I am the builders. I'll give you an example. I just had one recently where the builder called me. I put a for sale sign on the property, and the builder called me, and I started trying to negotiate the price, and the top price he said he could go was $18,000. The only problem is I've got retail buyers willing to pay me $30,000 to $40,000, and I sold that particular one, by the way, for $39,000. So that was a no-go for that builder. But then in another area, I had builders offering me more than the retail. So again, as you get into the business, you'll start to figure out, okay, in this subdivision, I'm going to retail it to a builder. In this subdivision, I've got people wanting to eventually put a custom home on there, or maybe even just move a mobile home on there, and builders are not looking for those lots. So you're naturally going to go to a retail buyer on those for the most part. Every once in a while, you get an investor in there that wants to put a mobile home on there and rent it out, because that's good money for them as well.
Yeah, I know none of this stuff, but I'm just sitting here this whole time like this. I'm just like listening to all of this golden information about, it's almost like you just have to think who is the audience, right? Who is that end buyer? What is that land going to be for that buyer? What's this land going to be for that one? Is it commercial? Can it be zoned differently? Maybe that's another thing. Is this land, can the land use change over time, or is it stuck in the mud? Is it not going to change? And therefore you're buying something that could be multifamily and multi-use, mixed use, which is also profitable too, because if it changes from whatever it is to commercial, that could be a huge,
profit. Yeah. Big time
massive.
profit.
I don't even know what those numbers are.
Well, and this is where your builders and your developers will come in and kind of take over the deal for you. So you don't even have to really bother learning that, because quite frankly, that's a stretched out long process. Rather than get into that side and become that developer, you can stay a flipper, or you can become a developer. If you stay a flipper, you can do volume. Right now is a time to do volume, right? And but if you're going to be developing, your numbers are going to go way down, and now you're just on this one property or two properties that you're developing out, and you can get to the very end of that, and then you come back and then they say, no, we're not going to do that zone change or whatever. So now you give it up time. These are just what I've learned through the years of being very careful about where you go with this. So to me, I'd rather hand this off to a builder or developer and let them take it, and they'll buy it from me up front. So I can tie up on a contract, sell it to them, and let them do all the development, zoning changes, whatever needs to be done. I'm letting somebody else do that. I don't even have time to get into that at all.
Yeah, you just want to keep amassing the system, right? You just want to keep finding more, and how you can keep scaling the land business, which is incredible.
That's the key word right there. You said scaling. I was about to say that, and you stole it from me.
Gotcha. I got you.
I'm going to have you an investor, and you're going to give up this lawyer stuff.
I'm just going to keep doing probate all over Florida. How about that? I'm going to keep scaling. John, I told people I've automated it, I systemized it, I've monetized it, and when you can do that in a business, you're there. You just got to scale.
Yeah. Then you scale from there. And, so, and once you have that, then, every time a market changes, whether it blows up or just keeps growing, then your business does too. And then when the market changes, your business is ready to go to the next stage. Look, if you did sell, let's say, for example, you were flipping to a developer. Well, pretty soon you're making friends with the developers. They're telling you, hey, this is what we're doing. And now if you're inquisitive enough and smart enough, just, lean in on them and find out what they're doing. And when the markets maybe go slow again, or you get to the point where, hey, maybe you found this great deal and you want to develop it, now you're prepared to go into it. Rather than trying to blindly go, but you don't have a mentor, you haven't been trained, and you can just run into brick walls. And by the way, that just really applies to everything. Whatever you're going to do, you're going to get into land, you find a mentor, find somebody who's been doing it, find somebody that you want to do what they've done. All right. So those are some of the criteria that I will give everybody. If you're looking for something, make sure you're learning from somebody that has done it and not did it 3 times and decided to start training, which, man, I tell you, YouTube is filled right now with people who, I closed 2 deals, I'm ready to start teaching.
Having a mentor helped change where I'm at right now, right? Like, you remember those moments that you're with a mentor that's been in it for 20, 30 years, and you don't forget those little tips and tricks. And I still take it today. He'll be on another episode, but this is why, having a mentor is a whole other ballgame. And that's what you're able to help a lot of people with your program, the whole Land Mogul program, and flipping lots and everything. Talk to us about using notes for land, John. So, when I first started my law area, and when I got out of law school, I was a lot into foreclosure defense, right? So the only thing I know about notes is when there's a note, there's a mortgage. And so that's the only thing I know. Tell us about how you can use notes for land investing.
First of all, it's a great way of being able to make deals happen. Plus, the big benefit is you're going to make more money when you bring a note situation into a a transaction. And by the way, just a side note, you get my book out and you'll learn all about notes and how to create them, even how to flip them. But in here, I went in, I'm always going back into my books and updating them. I don't like anything to stay stagnant, and because the market changes. I just updated the other book, the How to Flip Vacant Lots post-COVID, because the market's obviously changed somewhat now. And but one of the great things about notes is, well, besides those two things, is that you're going to be able to, well, let me just jump on one, which is expanding the price. For example, let's say I've bought a property for $10,000. All right, so I've tied it up on a contract. Haven't paid for it yet, so it's just tied up on a contract. Now I line up my buyer. Now I'm able to find a buyer who maybe they have $10,000 down payment, which is, I never sell a property for less than $10,000 down payment when I'm selling on a note. So that will cover my purchase of the property. So now that's free and clear. But because I normally would sell that cash price for maybe 20 or 25, I'm now able to push that up to 30 to 35,000 by offering owner financing on everything above that 10,000. So you can end up with a $10,000 to $20,000 note above what you normally will sell for a cash price. And the way I structure my notes, and that I found works so well, is I try to go after a $500 monthly payment. That $500 is just a magic number. It's affordable. It works for everybody when they're buying a lot. They're not buying a house, they're buying a lot. So they will pay that kind of money without thinking twice. In fact, it's a great deal. And so you can create these $500 note payments for this greater amount of money. You've got a free and clear paid off property. So technically now, what do you have? You have a note that has no underlying. You can't lose it. They could stop making payments and you could, if you had to, sit back and wait them out, you could. Quite frankly, I've been doing these kind of notes now for 7 years, and I've never had to foreclose, because when you take that kind of hefty down payment, they pay like clockwork, and they pay on time. Even right through COVID, nobody missed a payment with exception of one. That wasn't because of COVID, because of medical issues she had. We worked with her. Why? Because I don't owe on that note. That is a free and clear property. So every one of these notes you're creating, free and clear, so it's basically all profit coming in on a monthly basis. Now you've got that mailbox money coming in. So now you've got two machines working, right? You've got a flip machine where you're doing these cash deals and you bringing in lump sums, and you have this steady money already there. And that's what allows me to take off sometimes 2 or 3 months in a row, which I do. And I might do more training during a certain time, and then I stop some types of training, and then I go back into focusing on flip, on a type of flip. So it allows you the freedom to kind of do what you want. And for me, I've been teaching so long, and I think it's in my blood, because everybody in my family is a teacher of some type, it seems like, so including me. And there's such a satisfaction in helping people become successful and learn something and go out there and really, just tear it up with these techniques, that it gives you a satisfaction in life. So it gives you the reason to wake up in the morning. Look, when I'm just flipping, and I did 5 years, right, where I was not training at all. I simply was just flipping, doing this technique here over and over. And I just kind of got bored of it, because you don't get a satisfaction out of flipping properties. It's like, if you're playing poker or something, you don't get a satisfaction out of that. You get a satisfaction when you're connecting with other people, helping other people. And so that's another reason why I got back into that, besides people asking me, hey, what are you doing?
It's almost like the whole note investing with land is low risk and high reward. And what kind of percentages are you talking about with this note investing? Are you like, what is it?
Well, I mean, what do you mean in percentage? Interest rates can go right now. I mean, you can go all the way up to 9%, but you can also have 0% interest. I mean, when you're making that much profit on a deal, sometimes you may not want to charge interest. You just give them a great deal, take that money and run. So I mean, if your plans were to flip a note, yeah, you want to definitely have interest in it, and nothing wrong with that. But if you do the math, if you're doing these $500 notes, which I like to do, they'll pay out, over like a 3-year period typically, and they might only, if you add an interest on there, you might only get another 4 payments at 500. Well, rather than struggle trying to find somebody that's saying, "Oh, you're charging me 9%," instead of doing that, lower your interest rate and just do the note and move on, because you're already making plenty of profit on the actual price. That extra bump you get, I mean, technically it could be perceived as an interest in a way, because they're having to pay in a way extra for having this being able to finance it. So you're getting interest in it. There's more than one way, I guess, to pay interest. And there's some religions, the first time I ever came across a person that said, it's against my religion to pay interest. And so that's the way they do it. They just increase the price and pay it out. I thought, okay, well, that's secure right there.
I'm hearing low risk, high reward. There's got to be, there's this benefit to doing using notes with land and doing the investing. And I'll get through the books at the end too, John, so they can see the techniques, and I'll make sure we cover it. I know we got the graphics going across the screen. People can find it on Amazon, but it's just a fascinating concept. I mean, and not only that, when you get the note, you're probably in first position, right? Because I heard you say free and clear. So you're
always in free and clear. So what I don't like these sandwich deals where I'm having to pay out to somebody. I'm having to pay the seller a monthly, and then I'm depending on that buyer to pay me, because when a crash comes, guess who doesn't pay you, but you still owe that seller. And that is not a good feeling. And in every crash I've been through, I've had investor friends tell me, "Hey, I lost everything because of that kind of, double situation, a sandwich type situation." So I avoid those like the plague. In fact, I just have a rule: I will not do them. I don't have a single one. And I have the only time I did that was one time, and I mean, it worked out, because most of the time they do work out. But when they don't work out, it's just an ugly mess, and you can end up in lawsuits and all that stuff. Just stress I don't want in my life. Land became something where it just cut out so much of the stress that I said, I'm not even going back to the house site. Now, God bless everybody in houses. I loved it. I taught it for many years, and it made me a lot of money, but time to move on. And so that's what I'm doing right now.
And a popular question that comes up in investor meetings online, there's great investor groups in the Yellowbird, the RIAs, the Cash Geeks Network. Shout out to Cash Geeks. They had me on the show last night for the probate stuff, so it was fantastic. But a common question that comes in these groups is, what are you using? What corporate structure when you're buying the land? Because it's different maybe from buying homes. Are you doing land trust? Do you like the LLCs? I know you're in that Texas market, but especially in Florida, they got land trust, LLCs. What do you see and like as far as wrapping it up and titling the property so that it's not in your individual name, right? Because land you can't homestead land. I know they have a homestead in Texas too, but they got homestead in Florida as well, and that's your primary residence. A lot of things can't attach to it. How are you structuring it?
I use exclusively living trust. So living trust is very simple for me to put together. It's generally a 2-page trust. Now, listen, I'm not saying I'm not. There's a difference between a living trust that you need to go to a lawyer and have structured for your assets for after you pass, your home, all this other stuff. This is different. This is just an entity to hold property. And it's an entity to hold property usually for a very short period of time. Look, we're flipping literally in days most of the time. And so you're in and out of the deal. And so if you can just throw another entity in there, so that it's not coming in, obviously into your name, there's a multitude of reasons to do that. I should touch on some of those, but one of my favorite reasons is because, one, it will create another barrier. If somebody does decide to sue you, well, now they've got to sue the trust, and they've got to do discovery to figure out who owns the trust, and then they have to sue them, and just a lot of extra steps. Well, and I do like LLCs, but an LLC, somebody can look up an LLC and find out, oh, okay, you own that, and if a lawyer pierces that LLC, they can go after everything you have. So the more that you can put an entity, more you can put another entity into the mix, the better you are. It also starts to hide you from your competitors, so they don't see what markets you're in, what areas you're in, because unless they know the name of the trust, which they're not going to know, because you can make up a name of a trust every time you buy a property. It's a new name. It costs you $6 to notarize it. It's nothing that gets filed. So it technically is just a piece of paper that you can hold property and ownership in while you do the flip. And then if you're going to hold a note, then you now have another avenue of being able to separate your notes into different entities without having to create a bunch of LLCs, which would be just too expensive to do. So you could have, for example, and I go into this in the book, you could have your LLC as the owner, basically, of the trust, so called a settler or trustor. And that trustor is hidden, basically. So your LLC is actually hidden, because anything that's actually recorded in public property is just with a trust name. So it makes it very difficult to even find out what other properties you have, even if they wanted to pierce something and go after them. So it's just a great way of setting up some protection long term, some makes you kind of invisible to your competitors. It sets up some roadblocks that they do. And it also, sometimes you may want to do a flip that's kind of creative, right? Where you can just pass the living trust off to the next buyer and exit the strategy that way as well. So it just opens up a lot of opportunities.
I've actually never heard that one about trying to make sure your competitors don't see what you're doing or where you're investing. Haven't heard that one before, but I'm sure there's a lot that are watching right now going, John just let it all out, and now they all know the strategy, right? Because you hear the ones about keeping creditors away, so protecting yourself later on down the road so you don't get sued. It's not in your individual name. And then you're talking about just benefits, maybe tax benefits, whatever they are, because I don't dive into all that stuff.
Well, that's a good point, because on taxes, like with an LLC, you've got to file taxes in that LLC. It's got its own tax number and everything. But in a living trust, it all boils back down to the trustor. And the trustor, and in fact, the IRS doesn't even want to hear about your fancy trust name that you've got. They just say, whatever you sold in the trust, funnel it back to the settler. So if that's you, then it's going in on your personal tax. If it's your LLC, then it just funnels up to your LLC, and you're paying based upon the LLC. So it makes taxes a lot simpler too. And you can follow the trail off to whatever expenses you might have tied to the different living trusts.
Fascinating. There's so many possibilities that you could do with these things. And it seems like land, there's a lot of flexibility, low risk, high reward, so many different things. Again, we'll talk about the books right at the end. I'll make sure we have everybody that knows where to get that book. You're clicking the buy it now instead of add to cart. You're just buying it now, but we'll get there. John, I have signature questions on every one of my episodes on my shows. We can make it rapid fire. You can explain it however you'd like, but I always ask these, and I usually go in order. But what is the number one tip to locking up that contract, locking up that deal, especially in a hot market like it is today? I've heard different answers from people, right? Making sure you bring the contract to the house, or bring it to the seller. Or bring your mobile printer so you can print it out right there. I've heard so many different things. What is that number one tip you can give everybody?
Well, look, I do mainly virtual deals because my sellers are in another state. So I'm never talking to a seller. I can't even remember the last time I talked directly in front of a seller. It's all done by phone and mail. So my tip there would be to make sure that you're getting the contract in their hands. And because we typically deal with people over 60 generally as our sellers, and even if you aren't, quite frankly, what I want to do is I don't want to make it seem like, oh, this is like it's like a real easy thing. You can take a look at my contract and deny it if you want to, or negotiate if you want to. And that happens if you do what? If you send by DocuSign. Now, I have DocuSign, and every once in a while I'll use it because they do insist on it. That I'll use. But my secret is print the contract out, mail it out, so the contract is actually in their hands when they get it in the mail. Mail still has this magic to it. And when they get something in their hands, they know it's real. It's not like some digital stuff on their email, which they can just click and boom, it's gone. So that's my number one tip on that.
Everybody's got a different one, right? So mailers still are in play even today, right? It's not always virtual, especially with everything that happened with COVID, but everybody's got a different tip to that. So now everybody knows, John, thank you so much. So in terms of building trust with sellers, right? Direct to sellers, and you're doing your mailers, right? What is that number one tip for how do you build trust between you and the seller, not just in the beginning, but throughout the whole process, that building that relationship with them all the way to closing? How do you do it?
I try to, first of all, I don't try to push them. I'm never trying to sell them, first of all, even though really that's what we're doing. We actually have to sell sellers harder than we have to sell buyers, or if that makes sense. And to investors, you all know what I'm talking about. So what I do is when I'm talking to a seller, they'll usually always have some situation that's, connected to the property or whatnot. And if I can grab something, and I'm going to grab from two different places, generally, I'm going to grab something similar to their situation on another deal that I've already done or a deal that I'm doing like right now. And it doesn't matter now if that deal I'm doing right now really matches them. It's just telling them that you're doing this other deal or it's near closing or whatever. And that gives a sense of reassurance to them to make them understand, okay, I'm dealing with somebody that I'm going to get to where that person is. And that gives them a great sense of reassurance. I found that sellers, most of the time, all they want, and in fact, even when they're questioning you, is they want reassurance. So just be good at reassuring it. It's really nothing more than a pat on the back. And I teach this to my students. You'll hear the question and they don't really even care that much about it. What they're looking for is reassurance. I mean, it's a question, but it's not a deal killer. So just reassure them and you can move on.
Communication, right? Talking to them, explaining the process. That's something that a lot of people really want, right? Everybody's different. Everybody's got a different way of understanding and learning, but communicating and explaining the process is that tip right there about, right?
Well, it's bringing in another deal so that we're not just talking about their deal now. It's talking about another deal that you're doing. So when if you're going to go in and have heart surgery, you want to know that this person has done some other heart surgeries and maybe they're connecting. They'll say, oh, I had a patient just like you with this issue. Boom, a little reassurance and you can move on. And it makes you feel good.
I mean, if you're communicating with them and explaining what's happening, they're happy because people don't like when they're not communicated with, right?
Correct.
They don't.
You've got to communicate. You do have to communicate well. And so that is definitely an important part of it. So
this question can have many different answers. I don't know which way you're going to go with this. I don't think you told me what the answer was, but everybody's got a different answer. It could be closings. It could be appraisal. It could be tenants in the way. Well, that's not going to happen with land. And maybe there's something that's on the property that nobody knows about, but it could be title. Everybody's got a different answer when it comes to this. But what is one of your biggest deal killers that you find when you're investing in land and coming across these deals that can really just kill the deal?
Well, if there is something that just can't be cleared off title at all, so that definitely can be a deal killer. But what I do is I try to, when I'm training other people, in fact, I go into quite some detail in the book on how do you do a preliminary title search so that you don't run into that at closing and kill your deal. So it's quite easy to go into public record and do some research on that property you're looking at. And I'll generally do this before I ever call the seller back. So let's say the seller calls me from a letter that I sent out. Well, I know, some basics. So sometimes I can just go in there and do my research then. But even if I have to talk to them first to get more details about the property, then I do it, right after that call. So I'll go in and take a look and see if we're going to have, if it's a doable deal. Because let's say, for example, there is a $100,000 IRS lien against the seller, then that deal is strictly dead unless it's been 10 years. Now, after 10 years, the IRS lien falls off unless the IRS refiled. So after 10 years, that's not a deal killer anymore. But yeah, the deal killers that I do, and it's rare because you know what? So many things that you come up with on title can be fixed. So if it's a probate issue, you reach out to an attorney. If there's a judgment or lawsuit, some of those can be done just simply by negotiating them away, right? Or maybe the statute of limitations run out on them because most of them are 10 years. So there's that. I'm going to add one more deal killer because this just happened to me again. And I say again because I don't listen to my own training. And that is, don't over explain things to the seller. You will confuse them. So I'm constantly telling people, just explain enough to get so where they understand what's going on, and don't go too far. Don't get too fancy. Don't go to an extreme because that's a deal killer. They will get confused, and a confused mind will say no.
If you make it too complicated, they'll shut down.
Yeah, let's say a probate. Let's say, oh, I've got to take this to probate. And you say, that's not a problem. I've got an attorney that, will handle it for us and charge us for it at the closing. Boom, case closed. So, but if you start to go in and say, well, now this and that, and this and that, and you're just confusing them, and boom, you'll lose them.
And that's something I've talked about with probate. Same thing, right? So when you're approaching these sellers or you're interested in buying, you don't have to get into all of like the accounting, the inventory, all the words, the complicated things. Once you start doing that, like there was one person that I did a full webinar with foreclosuresdaily.com. And after the webinar, I got an email and somebody wanted to like see if I could review their timeline and say, can I mail this out? And it was like 1 to 2 months, it's this, 3 to 4 months, it's this, 1 to 2 years. And I was like, if I ever saw that in the mail, I'm stopping and I'm closing it, I'm sending it out, right? So give them too much like that, they're going to be closed off. So I get what you're talking about with this.
Yeah, and you learn. So you're doing it right, and you learn the cutoff. So you're describing exactly what's going to go down, and we're in full disclosure on everything. But you don't have to get into minute details. Okay, what's going to happen in the title closing? They can ask the title closer if they want to know about that stuff. And
just piggybacking off the IRS stuff. There was even a probate deal where got the probate done. I don't know, was it 1 to 2 weeks? Who knows what it was? But then there was an IRS lien of like $15,000 or $20,000, and it was only on one of the heirs' interest, just one. And that in itself was going to kill the deal, except for the fact that I think the lien was going to expire in a month. And if people don't know, IRS liens, when they're recorded and filed, they can also be self-releasing. So it's a lien and in of itself a release if it expires and they don't refile. So it's crazy that you bring up the stuff with the IRS because I've seen that almost killed a probate deal, and that's a whole other story. But
yeah, and which is another reason why if you're going to hold property, I always put it into a trust, because even if, let's say you got an IRS lien on yourself, it doesn't affect any property that you have in a trust, because a trust owns it. You may just be the trustee on it. And quite frankly, another reason why people love to use a trust is they can have liens on them right now. And they're saying, well, I can't invest in real estate because I got this lien on me, or I got judgments against me. And, but you can still do it in a living trust because it doesn't attach to the property that you hold in a living trust. That living trust is just a magic thing for every investor. That's why I wrote a book on it, because I think it was that important. To get that out there to them.
Well, I know everybody that's watching right now and that will listen later will take that advice and be honing in on it about how they can do that, how they can use trust to be in their land business, in their business period. And I'm going to read to everybody all these books that John has done, has authored. How to Flip Vacant Lots. We'll make sure we have the graphics up on the screen too. We're going to put them up there.
Okay.
Yeah. How to Flip Vacant Lots. How to Flip High-End Land. How to Flip Discounted Notes. That it's a whole different game. Living Trust for Real Estate Investors. John, so many different books. I can go on and on. These are definitely the primary ones when it comes to the land, the flipping business. So make sure you check it out on Amazon. If you go to, or you go to the website, I think you get the better discount too, where they can buy it. But you've been doing it 40 years. So people listening, people watching, this is the Land Mogul. This is John Alexander. Check out his Facebook group, the Land Mogul. He posts ton of stuff, great people in the group, very interactive, different for a Facebook group, right? I mean, there's some Facebook groups out there that, you know, you just have the bots and things, but you have the organic following. You go live in it, you do teachings, you actually have sometimes the whiteboard in the back, you'll explain this stuff. But John, thank you so much for being on the Al Nicoletti Show. I mean, we could probably keep going on and on about land. We could, but this is why people can find you. Reach out to John. He's a fantastic resource. He's on Clubhouse. I think now the new date is on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern.
10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Make sure you have your coffee before that. Oh, yeah, just like I did. But John, thank you so much for being on and giving everybody golden tips, golden nuggets. I know we're going to have a lot of people listening in because this is going to be on iTunes and Spotify. So final words, final thoughts.
Well, first, thank you for having me on, Al. It's always a pleasure, connecting with another person in our same line of work, actually, that can appreciate all this stuff. And then I can appreciate what you're doing as well. So just again, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure, John. And who are you looking to reach out to you, John?
Well, look, right now, so many wholesalers, because they're getting pushed out of the business by the lack of inventory out there. And then the really big guys have got phone rooms set up. They're just, they're pounding on them. So they're looking for another avenue of real estate to go into. This is it. There's no question about it. And so right now we're just seeing a lot of wholesalers jumping into this business. So that would be right now somebody that should really pay attention to this and jump on it while it's hot. You learn this stuff. And then when the market changes a little, you can continue to build on it.
Well, there you have it. I mean, follow John, follow him on the Land Mogul group, add him on Facebook, on the personal profile, find him out there. He's got all these books. It's incredible. I'm going to definitely read one day, and I'm going to just keep the whole probate thing going though, but I'm going to read one of those books one day. John, thank you so much again. And I'm just going to wrap this whole thing up, John. All right, everybody, if you want more content like this, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel, the Al Nicoletti Facebook page, and this whole thing, this Al Nicoletti Show is on iTunes and Spotify. That's right. You're watching right now. Take out your phone. You'll just be like, wow. Take out your phone, and you're going to find the Al Nicoletti Show on Spotify and iTunes. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. There's weekly episodes still coming out. So many great episodes, so many rock stars, superstars, and I'm on the business page, on my Facebook page, and next time, I'm going to be having Ron Champ Brooks. He's going to be next week on Monday, and then Trevor Augustus, the super investor, on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time on the Al Nicoletti Show. Take care.